Hey there, Discover Family Church. Pastor Johnny here. This morning I want to talk about what's going on in the world right now, but I want to talk about it from hopefully a little bit of a different perspective than most of us have been thinking about it or have been operating from. I watched this past week as a pastor I look up to greatly, and a pastor has spoken into me and Sarah's life and helped lead us. Had some unfortunate things happen to him and his church, and in the middle of all that has been attacked pretty viciously over some stuff that he shouldn't have been attacked over. Not really, not especially not in any way, shape, or form like he was. And I've had multiple people from the church ask me about it specifically, and not only that, I've dealt with it. I've thought about it. Like, my first response is like most of ours, which is, well, that person is just trying to attack them because they're this. They politically lean this way, or they think this way, or they want to attack the church for this. And we go after them, and then we step beyond that person, and we go, and this applies everywhere. I'm applying it to this situation, but it applies everywhere, because we do this when we see something that seems like an injustice towards God or for the church, or just an injustice towards our belief system. We automatically look at people to blame. And can I tell you, after dealing with this for a few days and praying on it, I really have gotten settled in my heart about what's going on. We always look for somebody to blame, and the thing is, the problem is that's exactly what the world does. We live in a world right now, we can look at it, that blames everybody else for their problems. They blame other people. Left side's blaming the right, right's blaming the left. The middle of the country blames California and New York, and they blame the middle of the country, and we all blame other countries and other places. Except when we do that, then we are bigoted or mean, and it becomes this big giant blame game where everybody's just pointing fingers at each other and yelling and screaming. But the thing is that that's what the world does, and that's not what God calls us to do. I'm going to read this verse, and you've heard it many times, but I'm going to read you it from two versions. The verse is from Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, and it really outlines what I believe is happening, what we're seeing happening in the church, what we're seeing happening in this world right now. And it's not our job to look for somebody to blame. It's our job to share Christ's love and grace and mercy with the world. That's our job. That's what we are supposed to do. Go into all the world and share the gospel. The gospel is what? It is hope. It is future. That's our job. It's not to blame. It's not to get upset. It's not to defend God, because God doesn't need defense. Listen what it says in Ephesians 6:2. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. What it's saying is, we're not wrestling against people. Quit blaming people. You're wrestling against the enemy. We're wrestling against Satan. We're wrestling against evil powers that are trying to tear down the church. And I believe right now, I have watched over this past 2 weeks multiple friends and friends of friends and people I know in churches around this country be attacked. Some of them did wrong things, some of them didn't. And I've watched them get torn down in the media. I've watched them get torn down by people. I've watched sometimes the church tear them down. I've watched sometimes the church lift them up while tearing down the rest of the world around them. And every single step of the way, what I'm seeing is people fighting against flesh and blood. But that's not what we're doing here. And I want to read that same verse from the Message version of the Bible. If you guys don't know, if you ever have a hard time reading the Bible, the Message version is such a great version of the Bible, because it outlines, what it is a paraphrase of the Bible. It basically tells the Bible in a format almost like a book that you can just, a normal, regular book that you can read, and it breaks it down in such a simple way, and I love it. And this is what it says instead of we do not struggle against, we do not fight against principalities and darkness and evils. This is what it says. It says, this is no afternoon athletic contest. This is no game that we walk away from and forget about in a couple of hours. Does that sound like the world right now? One week we're fighting against a sickness, and the next week we're fighting against racial inequality. Then we're fighting against sickness again, and we're fighting against politics, and we treat these things like they're afternoon sports games. But that's what it says. This is no afternoon athletic contest that we'll walk away from and forget about in a couple of hours. This is for keeps. A life or death fight to the finish against the devil and all his angels. I've never heard it spelled out in such a precise way, that what we are seeing happening in this world right now, it is not against people. It's not against man. It's not against China for the virus, or it's not against police officers or the African American community or a president or any one of a billion things that get blamed. And hear me, I'm not saying that some of them don't deserve blame and some of them didn't do stuff that led to what is happening. But we have to look deeper. We remember, we are aliens on this planet. We are supposed to be different. Why are we acting like the world? Quit looking at what's happening on the surface and look deeper. This is not something we're going to walk away from in a matter of hours. This is a life or death. This is for keeps. Life or death. Fight to the finish against the devil and his angels. We are not fighting against flesh and blood. We are fighting against principalities. So I encourage you, as you pray, don't pray against people. Pray against the evil that is the root cause. What the world is doing is screaming at symptoms. They're screaming at symptoms. But the cancer is not what the world says it is. The sickness is much deeper. We are fighting a war. The church, we've watched over the last couple of months, the church win in such cool and different ways. The church has been able to pivot. The church as a whole has been able to pivot, and all of a sudden they're ministering to people that they've never ministered to before. It is absolutely no mistake or no coincidence that the church is getting attacked so hard at the moment. It's because the church is winning, and the evil enemy is trying to take us out. These are deeper than what the world is doing or what the world is saying. We fight against something much bigger and broader than what the world fights against. Your fight's not with your neighbor. It's not with the guy around the street. It's not with the guy around the world. Your fight is against the devil and all of his angels. That's who we fight against. So what do we do with those neighbors? We share hope and a future with them. We share love with them. Even when they do things we don't like, we share hope and love with them. That's our job. That's what Jesus would do, and that's what we're going to do too. I love you guys. Be safe out there. And remember, we're fighting something bigger, so pray against that. Love on everything else. Have a great day.